In 1851, Sojourner Truth spoke in Akron at a women's rights convention held at the Universalist Stone Church on High Street. There, she delivered a famous speech challenging preconceived ideas about gender and race.
She was one of the greatest orators who was able somehow to articulate, when it came to the intersectional relationships of race, class, gender, why we should have equity, why women should have a right to the ballot box. And so the legacy for Sojourner continues today. There are many instances where we still have challenges when it comes to the right to vote. And so that is why we honor her in the work that we're doing today.
Akron's own Woodrow Nash designed the Truth statue, which is a departure from his typical work, internationally collected, and notably featured in a Beyoncé music video.
My art style is African Nouveau. I wanted to draw from my experiences. And being a black artist in America, my heritage and everything came from the continent, from Africa. But the influence, concepts of beauty and everything like that, was European. I wanted to draw from those two influences. The work that I do is more stylized. The Sojourner piece is more realistic.
Working on the design with the help of Jeff Willis, Nash drew inspiration from old music and speeches.
I listened to music from the Library of Congress, work songs. These men were on chain gangs, and old sermons from uneducated but inspired preachers. It put me in a position where I could experience timelessness. And it almost took me back to where she might have been and what she was doing.
I have as much muscle as any man.
In making the case for equality, Truth, a former slave, told a crowd in Akron she could work as much or more than a man.
I have plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed. And can any man do more than that?
She bragged about how she could outwork a man and out-eat him and, all these things. And I tried to put all that into work.
She had a way of presenting that was humorous. And that's a side that people don't think about. And so she really was engaging to her crowd. So she used materials that were familiar to them, like Bible quotes, and related it then to humankind about eating and about raising children and about the role of women in the community.
Her Akron speech has long been referred to as "Ain't I a Woman?" but historians have found those likely weren't her actual words.
The words that "Ain't I a Woman?" ? In that speech, which has a Southern dialect, was actually penned by Francidana Gage. And Gage was the head of the Second Ohio Women's Rights Convention here in Akron. So she was actually there. So in reading that, people believed that that is exactly what Sojourner Truth said.
But Gage's version of the speech was written 12 years after it was given. Further study provides more context.
Sojourner Truth, born Isabella Baumfree, was a native Dutch speaker. So English was not her native language, and she was not Southern. So you have to then look at the time period, and so it's during the Civil War, and Gage is actually appealing to the time period and trying to gather interest and sympathy, putting her in the place of a Southern slave woman, when in actuality, she was born into slavery in New York.
A version of the speech, published weeks after the conference in the Anti-Slavery Bugle, carries a similar message, but without the Southern dialect. Historians believe Truth worked on this version with the writers.
The women are coming up. Blessed be God.
Akron's tribute to Truth can help people make connections with this history more than 150 years later.
It's complicated, but it's simple. Place matters. You matter. You have what you need to succeed where you are, and you can go and help others.
This history has inspired the people working on the statue as well.
It's going to become my legacy. Very happy that I had this opportunity to create something that would live long after I'm gone.
Nash's design of the statue was cast in bronze here in Northeast Ohio at Studio Foundry in Cleveland.
But in this particular case, I knew it's Sojourner Truth. I know Woodrow from other pieces that we've done with them. I love the project and the justice of it all, and so I'm happy to be part of it.
Foundry workers created molds from Nash's design, and then they buried them in a 6-foot deep pit. The team then poured bronze, heated to nearly 2,000 degrees, into the molds to form the statue.
We're doing it the old school style, so it's a combination of plaster and sand. Actually, we use a third ground up molds. It's essentially contaminating our mix. And what that does is make it more porous and more breathable, which is what we want. And we tried to make this as weak as possible so that it'll pour as well as it can. Having said that, it's weak enough that if we try to do it out of the ground, there's not enough strength. So we ram it up in sand as a buttress against the pressures of the molten bronze.
After everything cooled, workers opened up the molds with axes and sledgehammers before moving on to the finishing work. The completed statue will reside in a park plaza steps from where Truth once stood in 1851, inviting people to reflect upon her legacy for years to come.
I wanted to spark empowerment. I wanted to spark a sense of I may not be like others. Sojourner Truth wasn't. She was Dutch speaking out of New York. I wanted to spark that it's okay to be different and unique. I wanted to spark that you can always speak up like truth. Always live in your truth. You are good enough.